Dr. Samuel Grant slapped the clipboard out of Emily Roberts' hands right there in the middle of the nurse's station in front of everyone. Papers scattered across the floor. The room went dead silent. "Pick that up," he said, not even looking at her. "And next time you try to give me your little opinion about a patient's chart, remember something: you are a nurse. A first-week nurse at that. You don't think. You don't suggest. You do what you're told and you stay out of my way." He walked off without blinking. Not one person said a word. Emily stood there, the humiliation burning through her chest like a brand. She bent down slowly and picked up every single paper one by one while the entire corridor watched. Nobody in that hallway knew who she really was. And that was exactly how she needed it to stay. If you're new here, please subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a story. Drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story has traveled. Now let's get into it. It was the kind of cold that Chicago did best in February, the kind that got into your bones before you even stepped off the train. Emily Roberts pulled her coat tighter as she walked through the sliding glass doors of Mercy General Hospital, her sneakers squeaking on the freshly mopped lobby floor. The overnight security guard gave her a nod. She gave one back. That was the most warmth she'd felt all evening. She had been working the trauma unit for 6 days. 6 days of keeping her head down, her mouth shut, and her eyes open. 6 days of pretending she didn't notice when the senior nurses rolled their eyes at her, or when the residents spoke over her like she was furniture, or when Dr. Grant, the head of trauma surgery, a man so full of himself he practically needed a separate room just to hold his own ego, made her feel about 2 inches tall every time she asked a question. She clocked in at 10:58, 2 minutes before her shift started, and immediately grabbed her assignment sheet. Bay 4 through Bay 9. A decent stretch. She could handle it, though. The first hour was quiet enough that she could breathe, could think. She checked her patients: a 63-year-old man recovering from an appendectomy, a teenage boy with a concussion from a football game, a woman in her 40s who had come in for chest pains that turned out to be severe anxiety. Emily checked their vitals, updated their charts, brought the teenager an extra blanket without being asked. Small things. She was good at small things. Just after midnight, her colleague Linda Cruz appeared at her elbow. Linda was 10 years older with a low voice, tired eyes, and a habit of chewing on the end of her pen when things got tense. She was the only person in the trauma unit who had been consistently decent to Emily since day one. "You doing okay, Juanita?" Linda asked. "I'm fine," Emily said. "I saw what happened earlier with Grant." Linda glanced over her shoulder, then lowered her voice. "He does that to everyone new. Don't take it personally." "I don't," Emily said, and she meant it. She'd been screamed at by worse people in worse circumstances. A surgeon with a God complex was not going to be what broke her. Linda studied her for a moment, something flickering in her expression, like she almost wanted to say more but didn't. "Okay," she said finally. "I've got beds 7 and 8 if you need backup." "Thanks." Emily turned back to her charts. What she didn't say to Linda, what she would not say to anyone here ever, was that she was tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. Not because the job was hard, the job was fine. It was the constant performance of being normal that wore on her. The careful editing of herself every single moment. The way she had to slow down, hold back, pretend to hesitate, when her instincts were screaming at her to act faster, think, sharper, move. Every day she walked through those hospital doors, she was playing a character. And she was very, very good at it. She'd had practice. She had been Emily Roberts' trauma nurse for 14 months now. Before that, she was someone else entirely. Someone whose name appeared in classified documents, in black budget mission files. Someone who had stood in the dark in places most people would never find on a map and done things she would carry for the rest of her life. She was not that person anymore. She had chosen this. Chosen the quiet, the routine, the ordinary weight of a hospital floor on a cold February night. She went back to her rounds. At 1:15 in the morning, the call came in. It didn't come through the regular channels. It didn't come through dispatch or the hospital radio system. It came through the charge nurse's direct line, a number that was supposed to be used only in extreme circumstances. Emily happened to be standing at the nurse's station when it rang close enough to hear the charge nurse, a broad-shouldered man named Marcus Webb, go very still. "Say that again," Marcus said into the phone. Silence. A Black Hawk who authorized that landing. Another pause. His jaw tightened. Understood. Get me Dr. Grant and the surgical team. Now. He hung up and looked around the station with the expression of a man who had just been told something he would have preferred not to know. What's happening? Emily asked. Marcus looked at her, then past her, then back. We've got an incoming trauma, high priority, VIP designation. He was already moving around the desk. Stay on your patients, Roberts. This is above your level. She watched him go, above her level. She turned back to her charts and told herself it wasn't her business. She lasted about 4 minutes, because something was wrong and she could feel it the way she used to feel things before a mission went sideways. A low hum at the base of her skull, a stillness in her chest that her body had learned to recognize as a signal. She didn't ignore signals. She finished her check on base 7, then made her way casually, unhurried, deliberate toward the east corridor, which connected to the trauma bay where Marcus was now gathering a small army of nurses and residents. She could hear Dr. Grant's voice already sharp and commanding, slicing through the ambient noise of the floor. She didn't go in. She stood just outside in the hallway, and she listened. Level of consciousness on arrival, Grant was fine. Unresponsive, ECS of 3 on scene, elevated on approach. What kind of injuries are we talking? A pause, someone lowering their voice. She caught fragments. Blunt trauma, possible internal hemorrhage, shoulder wound consistent with a fall, or in here the resident's voice dropped so low she almost missed it, a bullet graze. Emily went very still. The doors to the trauma bay burst open and the gurney came through fast, surrounded by a cluster of paramedics in tactical gear that was not standard issue for any civilian emergency service she had ever seen. The man on the gurney was large, over 6 feet broad through the shoulders, built like someone who had spent decades using his body as a tool. His face was ashen. There was blood on his shirt collar, and his left arm was immobilized with a field-expedient splint that Emily recognized immediately. She had made one exactly like it herself, twice. She pressed back against the wall as they passed. One of the paramedics was already on a radio speaking quietly, and she caught 2 words before the trauma bay doors swung shut behind them. Blaze. Secure. She stood in the hallway for a moment. Blaze, she knew that name. Not personally, but she knew it the way people in her former world knew certain names by reputation, by the shadow they cast in briefings and classified channels. James Harrison. Call sign Blaze. Former Navy SEAL Tier 1 operator, retired from service 10 years ago, and now the billionaire CEO of Armada Global Security, one of the largest private defense contractors in the world. A man with the kind of power that made governments nervous and enemies dangerous. What was he doing in her hospital? She walked back to her patients. She checked vitals. She updated charts. She did everything she was supposed to do, and she did it by rote because the thinking part of her brain was somewhere else entirely, turning over what she had seen and heard like pieces of a puzzle she wasn't sure she was ready to solve. At 2 in the morning, Linda found her in the medication room. Have you heard what's going on in Trauma Bay 1? Linda said. She was doing the pen chewing thing, which meant she was nervous. A little, Emily said carefully. They're saying it's some kind of corporate executive, private helicopter, private security, the whole thing. Marcus has been fielding calls from hospital administration for the last half hour. She shook her head. Someone important. How's he doing? Linda hesitated. That's the thing. His vitals they're strange. Grant keeps saying it's shock, but the numbers aren't matching up the way they should. She paused. I probably shouldn't be talking about this. You probably shouldn't, Emily agreed. Linda left. Emily finished her rounds. At 2:37, she was walking past Trauma Bay 1 when she heard Dr. Grant's voice rise sharply, not in the controlled, commanding way he usually spoke, but in the way people spoke when something had just surprised them and they didn't like it. She slowed down without stopping. His pressure shouldn't be doing that, Grant was saying. Increase the drip and run another EKG. I want to know why. A pause. The sound of a monitor beeping, irregular and quick. Where is the consult from cardiology I asked for that 20 minutes ago? Emily kept walking, but she was thinking about the breathing pattern she had glimpsed for half a second when the gurney rolled past her. She had been in enough field situations to know what controlled breathing looked like versus unconscious breathing. The rise and fall of a man working to stay still was different from the rise and fall of a man who was actually out. The chest moved differently. The jaw held differently. She was probably wrong. She was a first-week nurse in a trauma unit, and she had seen the man for maybe 3 seconds in a moving hallway at 1:30 in the morning. She was probably wrong. She stopped walking. She stood in the middle of the corridor and she thought about Dr. Grant's voice, about the irregular monitor readings, about the field expedient splint and the tactical gear paramedics and the word ablaze spoken in a low voice over a radio. She thought about what Linda had said. His vitals are strange. The numbers aren't matching up. She went back to her charts and she wrote down everything she had observed in the last 90 minutes. Not because she was going to do anything with it, just because writing things down helped her think. She had learned that a long time ago in a different life under a very different kind of pressure. The writing did help her think. And what she was thinking by 3 in the morning was that the man in Trauma Bay 1 was not as unconscious as he was letting on. At 3:14, Dr. Grant came out of Trauma Bay 1 looking like a man who had been arguing with a problem that refused to cooperate. He saw Emily at the nurse's station and stopped. "Roberts," he said, "what are you doing standing around?" "Updating charts," she said. He looked at her the way he always looked at her, like she was a minor inconvenience in a world that had more important things to do. "I need someone to do a 30-minute vitals check on the patient in Bay 1. The regular nursing staff is backed up, and I need continuous monitoring." He looked at his watch. "Think you can handle that without making a mess of it?" "Yes," she said. He walked away without another word. She sat with the instruction for exactly 10 seconds. Then she picked up her equipment and walked to Trauma Bay 1. The room was quieter than she expected. The monitors hummed. The overhead light was dimmed. One of the residents, a young man with dark circles under his eyes, was sitting in the corner filling out paperwork half asleep. He barely looked up when she entered. She moved to the bedside and began her check. Blood pressure, pulse ox, respiratory rate. She wrote the numbers down clean and precise, and then she looked at the patient. Up close, James Harrison was even larger than he had seemed on the gurney. The kind of man whose physical presence took up more space than his body technically occupied. Despite the pallor and the oxygen cannula and the hospital gown, he had the bearing of someone who was accustomed to being the most dangerous person in any room, even lying down, even with an IV in his arm and a monitor on his finger. Emily checked his pupils with her penlight, standard procedure. She was leaning over him when she saw it. The left corner of his mouth. A microtension almost imperceptible, the kind of thing you'd miss if you weren't specifically looking for the muscle patterns of controlled stillness. She had practiced that same control herself, lying flat in a hide site for 14 hours, managing every breath, every twitch, keeping her body quiet while her mind stayed sharp. She stood back up slowly. She wrote down the pupil response on her chart. In the corner, the resident turned a page in his paperwork. She leaned down again, and this time she spoke quietly, almost at a breath directly beside his ear. "Your respiratory rate has been too controlled for someone in a GCS of 3 since you arrived. Your BP dips are timed to about every 8 minutes, which means you're inducing them voluntarily. And that splint on your arm wasn't made by a paramedic." She paused. "I'm not going to tell anyone. I just need to know if you're in danger." Silence. The monitor beeped steadily. Then, without warning, without any change in the rest of his body, James Harrison opened his eyes. They were gray, clear, completely alert. He looked at her for one long moment, and the calculation in his gaze was the kind she recognized. The kind that happened in the space of a second and covered a lot of ground. He was reading her, measuring her, deciding something. "Who are you?" he said. His voice was barely above a whisper, rough at the edges, but controlled. In the corner, the resident shifted in his chair. Emily kept her voice level, her expression neutral. Her posture exactly what it would be if she were doing nothing more than monitoring a patient's vitals. "I'm the nurse who just figured out you're faking a coma," she said quietly. "Who are you and why are you here?" His jaw tightened slightly. "My name," he said, "is not the problem right now." "Then what is?" He glanced toward the door, just for a fraction of a second. But she caught it. "How long until shift change?" he said. 2 hours and 40 minutes, she said immediately. Something moved behind his eyes. Not quite surprise, more like reassessment. "You answered that fast." "I pay attention," she said. He studied her for another long moment. The resident in the corner coughed, shuffled his papers, went back to his work. "There are people coming," Harrison said, barely audible. "People who are not here for my health." Emily felt the hum at the base of her skull again, the one her body used as a warning system. How many? She asked. He blinked once slowly, like a man deciding how far to trust a stranger in a situation where trust was a resource he could not afford to waste. At least 3, he said. Maybe more. I don't know their exact timeline. I only know they're coming. She absorbed this. She looked at the door. She looked at the monitor, the IV lines, the resident still sitting in the corner, with his paperwork, completely unaware that the patient he was supposed to be observing was wide awake and coordinating something in a voice too low to carry. She looked back at Harrison. Why didn't you tell the hospital security? She said. The corner of his mouth moved in something that was not quite a smile. Because hospital security isn't equipped for what's coming. And because I don't know yet who I can trust inside this building. She let that land. But you're telling me, she said. You caught me, he said simply. That means something. She stood there for 1 beat, 2. She thought about her quiet life, her new start, the carefully constructed, ordinary person she had spent 14 months building. She thought about Linda's voice saying she probably shouldn't be talking about this. She thought about the clipboard hitting the floor, the papers scattering. Dr. Grant walking away without looking back. She thought about the 2 words she had caught in the hallway. Blaze. Secure. She picked up her chart. She clicked her pen. She wrote down the vitals in clean, precise numbers, exactly as they were supposed to be. Close your eyes, she said quietly, and don't open them for anyone but me. He looked at her for one more moment, then he closed his eyes. She walked to the door, pushed it open, and stepped back into the corridor. The hospital hummed around her the way it always did at 3 in the morning, that particular frequency of a building that never fully slept, that moved constantly under the surface of its own quiet. She walked down the hallway at a measured, unhurried pace, and in her chest, something that had been dormant for 14 months was waking up. She did not try to stop it. Emily didn't go back to the nurse's station. She went to the supply room at the end of the east corridor, the one that nobody used after 2 in the morning because it was out of the way, and the overhead light flickered, and she stood there in the half-dark, and she breathed. In through the nose, out through the mouth, 4 counts each, a technique she had learned in a concrete room in Virginia from a man who told her that controlled breathing was the difference between a decision and a mistake. She ran through what she knew. James Harrison, call sign Blaze, former SEAL, current billionaire, was lying in trauma bay, one faking a coma with a discipline that told her his training had never fully left him, the same way hers had never fully left her. He had arrived by military-spec helicopter with paramedics in tactical gear. He had a bullet graze on his shoulder that had been field-dressed before he ever reached the hospital. And he had just told her in a voice barely above a whisper that people were coming, at least 3, maybe more. She pressed her palms flat against the shelf in front of her. The question was not whether she believed him. She believed him completely. The question was what she was going to do about it. She had built this life very carefully. Every choice she had made in the last 14 months, the small apartment in Lincoln Park, the night shifts, the way she kept her head down, and her history locked, had been constructed around a single priority. Stay invisible. Stay out. Don't let the old world find you. And now the old world had flown itself into her hospital on a Black Hawk and asked her for help. She almost laughed. She pushed off the shelf, walked back into the corridor, and started thinking like the person she used to be. First thing, information. She needed to know the layout of who was in the building right now and who wasn't. Hospital security at this hour was a 3-person rotation, 2 stationary posts, 1 roving. She had already mapped that out in her first week out of habit, the way she mapped everything. The roving guard made his rounds every 22 minutes. The stationary post near the main entrance changed personnel at 4 a.m. The loading dock in the back of the building, it was monitored by camera only. No physical presence between 3 and 5. Loading dock, she filed that away. Second thing, she needed to know what Harrison knew, and she needed to know it in more detail than he had given her in 40 seconds at a bedside, which meant she needed to get back into that room without raising flags. She walked to the nurse's station and picked up the Bay 1 chart without being asked, like she was doing a routine follow-up. Marcus was on the phone at the far end of the desk. Linda was with a patient. The night shift resident, Dr. Tate, was writing orders with the mechanical focus of someone running on caffeine and willpower. Nobody looked at her. She walked back to Trauma Bay 1. 3:26 a.m. The resident in the corner was asleep, actually asleep this time, head tilted against the wall pen still loosely in his hand. Emily assessed the situation in one glance. walked to the bedside, and bent close. "It's me," she said quietly. Harrison's eyes opened. Same sharp gray, completely present gaze. No transition, no grogginess. He had not actually been sleeping at all. "Who else knows you're here?" she asked. "My chief of security, two of my personal team. They're the ones who brought me in." He paused. "One of them should be in the building right now, posted near the east stairwell." She had not seen anyone near the east stairwell. "What does he look like?" 6'1" blonde, built like a linebacker. "Name is Reeves." She thought back over everyone she had passed in the last 3 hours. "I haven't seen him." Something shifted in Harrison's expression. Not panic, he wasn't built for panic, but a precise, controlled concern that was somehow more alarming. "How long ago did you come on shift?" 10:58. He should have been in position by 11:30. The silence between them held weight. "That's a problem," she said. "Yes," he said. She straightened up, made a note on the chart, kept her hands moving so that if anyone glanced through the window in the door, they would see a nurse doing her job. "Walk me through what happened before you got here." Short version. He didn't hesitate. He had clearly already decided to trust her, at least to a working degree, and he wasn't the type to waste time second-guessing a decision once it was made. "I was in a meeting, private facility off the books. Someone inside my organization leaked the location. We took fire on the way out, lost 2 vehicles. I took a graze on the shoulder, not serious, but enough to bleed. My team made the call to bring me here under emergency protocol, covered as a standard trauma because a hospital is the one place my enemies couldn't move on me without exposure." "Except they're moving on you anyway," she said, "which means either the exposure calculation changed," he said, "or they don't care anymore." She absorbed that. Why wouldn't they care about exposure? His jaw set. Because if the reason they want me dead is something that's about to go public anyway, then a messy ending inside a hospital is a small price to pay for making sure I can't speak. She stared at him. "What are you about to go public with?" He looked at her for a long moment. "How much do you know about defense contracting?" "Enough," she said. "There's a procurement fraud operation running through 3 separate government contracts. It goes higher than anyone has publicly reported. I have the documentation. It goes live in 72 hours through 2 independent journalists." He paused. "The people who want me dead aren't just business rivals. Some of them have federal badges." She felt the weight of that land in her chest like a stone dropping into still water. "And you brought this here," she said. "I didn't have many options at the time." She almost said something sharp. She held it, because he was right. He hadn't exactly planned on being shot at and bleeding out on a cold Tuesday night in February. She looked at the door, looked back at Bain. "I need you to stay under. Keep faking it. Don't react to anything you hear unless it's my voice." "Understood." A beat. "You were military." It wasn't a question. She didn't confirm it. She just picked up his chart and walked to the door. "I'll be back in 15 minutes. She stepped out into the corridor. 3:41 a.m. She found the east stairwell in under 2 minutes. It was empty. She stood there and looked at the scuffed linoleum and the metal railing and the faint smell of antiseptic, and she thought about a man named Reeves, 6'1" blonde, built like a linebacker who was supposed to be standing here and wasn't. She checked the landing below. Empty. She checked the landing above. Empty. On the wall beside the door to the second floor, there was a smear. Small, dark, at about shoulder height. She leaned in close. Blood. Fresh. She did not touch it. She stood back up, kept her face neutral, and walked away from the stairwell at the same unhurried pace she always used. Her pulse was steady. It had been since the moment she walked into Trauma Bay 1 and saw the micro-tension in Harrison's jaw. That was something she had always found strange about herself. That danger didn't make her heart race. It made it slow down. It made everything slow down, drop into sharp focus the way the world looked through a rifle scope. She walked to the supply room again, pulled out her phone, and called the one number she had promised herself she would never use unless there was no other choice. It rang 4 times. A voice answered. Low, careful. "Roberts? I need a sit rep on a name," she said quietly. "Harrison, James, Armada Global." A pause. "That's an active file." "I know. You're supposed to be out of the field." "I am out of the field," she said. "I'm a nurse. I'm at my hospital." The field wasted in through my front door. Another pause longer this time. You're saying he's there, in my trauma unit, faking unconsciousness. And I just found blood in the east stairwell that belongs to his missing security lead. The voice on the other end went quiet in a specific way, the quiet of someone who was simultaneously listening and processing and pulling information from somewhere else. She had worked with this voice for 3 years. She knew its registers. How many hostile? He asked. He said at least 3, possibly more. Timeline unknown. What do you need? Right now, just tell me if there are any federal players on the threat side. He said some of them have badges. The pause this time was weighted. I can't confirm or deny over this line, but I can tell you that the Armada procurement story is about to detonate, and there are people in very expensive suits who would prefer it didn't. That's a confirmation, she said. That's an observation, he said. Roberts, be careful. You're not carrying, you're not covered, and you're in a civilian building full of civilians. I know where I am, she said. I just needed to know if the information was real. The information is real, he said. Whatever he told you, it's real. She ended the call. She put her phone back in her pocket. She stood in the supply room for exactly 6 seconds, and then she started thinking about what she had at her disposal. That wasn't a firearm. 3:58 a.m. She did her full patient rounds, every bay, every chart, every vitals check, and she did it perfectly. And no one watching her would have seen anything other than a diligent night shift nurse doing her job. But her eyes were moving the whole time, counting, measuring, the security camera angles, the door release points, the position of every staff member currently on the floor, the supply cart in the east corridor. The maintenance closet near Bay 6 that she knew for a fact had a door that opened outward into a dead-end junction useful for funneling, the laundry chute at the north end that connected to the basement level. She had mapped this floor her first week the way she mapped every space she inhabited, and she had told herself it was just habit, just background noise from an old life. She was very glad now that she hadn't managed to break the habit. At 4:03, Linda appeared beside her at the medication cart. Something's going on, Linda said. Her voice was different, lower. The pen was in her hand, but she wasn't chewing it, she was gripping it. Emily looked at her. What do you mean? There was a man in the hallway near the east stairwell about 20 minutes ago. I didn't recognize him. He wasn't in scrubs, wasn't in a visitor badge, wasn't security. I asked Marcus about him, and Marcus said he hadn't checked anyone in. She looked at Emily. I went back to look and he was gone. Emily kept her expression exactly where it was. What did he look like? Big, dark jacket. He had earpiece. Linda Varey's voice dropped further. Emily, I've been doing this for 12 years. I know when something is off. She looked at Linda for a moment. This woman who had been decent to her from day one, who had low eyes and a tired voice and 12 years of reading hospital floors like other people read books. She thought about what she was about to say and what it would mean. I need you to do something for me, Emily said, and I need you to not ask me why be. Linda's eyes sharpened. Okay, I need you to get every non-essential person off this floor. Quietly, no alarms and no announcements. Tell Dr. Tate you're doing a routine bed audit and need the corridor clear. Get the sleeping resident out of Bay 1, tell him there's a consult request for him in the ER. Can you do that? Linda was staring at her. Who are you? I'm a nurse, Emily said, and I'm trying to make sure everyone on this floor stays safe tonight. Will you help me? A long beat. Yes, Linda said. Go now. Be normal about it. Linda walked away without another word. Emily turned back to the medication cart and sorted through it with precise hands. She was thinking about weight and reach and response time, and she was thinking about a man with an earpiece who had been standing near a stairwell where there was fresh blood on the wall, and she was thinking about a missing security lead named Reeves who had been in position at 11:30 and was not in position anymore. At 4:17, the lights in the east corridor flickered. It lasted less than a second. Nobody at the nurse's station looked up. Power fluctuations were routine in old hospital buildings. Emily looked up. Because a power fluctuation that lasted less than a second and affected only one corridor section was not a normal power fluctuation. That was someone testing a breaker box or accessing a junction panel. She had seen the same thing done before, not in hospitals but in other buildings by people who needed to understand a facility's electrical layout quickly. They were already inside. She walked to Trauma Bay 1. She did not run. Running would draw attention, and attention was the last thing she needed right now. She pushed open the door. The resident was gone. Linda had already moved him. Harrison's eyes opened the instant she crossed the threshold. "They're in the building," she said. He started to sit up. "Don't," she said sharply. "Not yet. If they come in here and you're upright, the scenario changes in ways I can't control. Stay down until I tell you otherwise." He held. She could see it cost him something. He was not a man built for lying still while a threat approached. But he held. "How many confirmed?" he asked. "Unknown. At least one in the East Corridor area. Possibly more." She moved to the far side of the room, checked the door hinge, the window, the angle of the internal window that looked out onto the corridor. "Your man Reeves, do you have any way to reach him independently of the main channel?" "Secondary frequency. My earpiece is in my jacket." He nodded toward the locker on the wall. She got it open in 10 seconds, found the earpiece, brought it to him. He fitted it in with practiced efficiency. "Reeves," he said quietly, "check in." Static. "Reeves, respond." More static, then barely a sound. Not words, just a sound, like someone breathing through effort. Harrison's face went stone still. "He's alive," he said, "but he can't speak. They've got him contained somewhere." "East stairwell," she said, "second floor landing. There was blood." His expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. The kind of thing that happened to people who had spent years learning to keep their reactions internal, a flash of something hot and controlled there and gone in half a second. "Okay," he said. He looked at her directly. "What's your plan?" She almost told him she didn't have one yet, but that wasn't entirely true. "There are underground maintenance tunnels that connect this building to the east parking structure and the adjacent medical office building," she said. "Access point is in the basement through the laundry corridor. I can get you there." She paused. "But we can't move until the corridor is clear, and we can't get to the basement without passing through the main hall junction. That's exposed. How long to get clear? Depends on where they are and how many." He sat up slowly, keeping his movements controlled. The IV line pulled at his arm. He looked at it with the expression of a man who viewed medical equipment as a temporary inconvenience, pulled it out with clean efficiency, pressed the gauze pad over the site, and held it. "I can move," he said. "I know you can," she said. "That's not what I'm concerned about." "What are you concerned about?" She looked at him. "There are other people on this floor. My colleagues. Patients who can't move on their own." She paused. "Whatever happens in the next hour, nobody else gets hurt. That is the condition. If it comes down to a choice between a clean exit and keeping someone else safe, you'll choose the someone else," he said. "Yes," she said flatly, "I will." He looked at her for a long moment. She had the sense again of being read, measured, assessed at a speed and depth that most people couldn't manage in a conversation that wasn't happening under pressure. He was very good at it. He'd had his own years of practice. "Agreed," he said, and she believed him. Not because she trusted him entirely yet. She didn't, not fully, it was too early for that, but because the way he said it had the flatness of a man who had made similar agreements before and understood the weight of them. She moved to the door. "Stay down until I come back," she said. "If anyone else opens that door, you're unconscious. If I'm not back in 10 minutes, "I'll figure it out," he said. "I know you will," she said. "I'm hoping you won't have to." She stepped back out into the corridor. The hall was quieter now. Linda had done her job. The ambient noise of the floor had dropped, the unnecessary movement cleared away. Marcus was at the station with his back to her. Dr. Tate was in Bay 3 and not paying attention to anything outside his immediate field. She walked the length of the corridor, slowly checking every doorway, every shadow pocket, every angle of approach. She was doing the math in real-time positions, distances, response windows. Her hands were loose at her sides. Her breathing was the 4-count rhythm. She reached the junction at the north end of the floor, and that was where she saw him, dark jacket, earpiece, standing with his back to the fire exit door, in a posture that was designed to look casual and achieve the opposite because real casual didn't have that kind of alertness in the shoulders, that particular distribution of weight that meant a person was ready to move fast and in a specific direction. He hadn't seen her yet. She had maybe 3 seconds before that changed. She turned smoothly into the doorway of the linen supply alcove to her left out of his line of sight and pressed her back against the shelf. Her heart was doing the slow, precise thing it always did. She ran the numbers. He was between her and the north corridor, which was between her and the basement access. She had no weapon, no backup, no cover. She had a hospital floor with her colleagues on it and a man faking a coma in a room 20 yards away, and the information in her head that told her this was about to accelerate, whether she was ready or not. She picked up the metal IV pole leaning against the supply shelf. She tested the weight of it once in her hands, and she thought with a clarity that surprised even her that it felt right. It felt familiar. It felt like being exactly who she was. She stepped back into the corridor. She stepped out of the linen alcove and walked directly toward him. Not fast, not slow. The exact pace of a nurse who had somewhere to be and nothing to hide. The IV pole in her right hand held low and loose, like she was transporting it to another bay. Her eyes were forward. Her breathing was the 4-count rhythm. Her whole body was saying one thing and her mind was doing something else entirely. He saw her at 12 feet. His shoulders shifted. A small adjustment, barely visible, but she caught it. He was recalculating. She was staff. She was a woman in scrubs. She was not what he had been told to watch for, which meant she was either a problem or she was nothing. He decided nothing. That was his first mistake. She closed the distance to 8 feet, and his eyes moved past her toward the corridor behind her, the way people doing surveillance did when they were checking their field of view. And in that half second, when his focus lifted off her face, she moved. It was not dramatic. It was not the kind of thing that would have looked impressive from the outside. It was fast and quiet and completely precise, the IV pole catching him across the back of the knees with enough force to buckle his legs, and then her hands were on him before he hit the floor, controlling the fall, redirecting his momentum against the wall and not outward into the corridor where the sound would carry. His earpiece skittered across the floor. She had a knee in his back and his right arm torqued behind him. In under 3 seconds, her free hand clamped over his mouth. He tried to push up. She added pressure to the arm joint, not enough to break enough to make the cost calculation very clear, and he went still. "I'm going to ask you one question," she said, her voice barely above a breath, her mouth close to his ear. "How many of you are in this building right now?" He said nothing. She increased the pressure by a fraction. He made a sound. "Nod once for every person," she said, "and don't give me anything cute. I'll know." A pause, then slowly 4 nods, 4 total, including him. "Where are the other 3? He said nothing again. She reached across him and picked up his earpiece from the floor. With her free hand, brought it to her own ear. Static. Then a voice. Male, clipped, professional. "Hawk, check in. We're moving to secondary in 6 minutes." She pressed the earpiece into her palm and looked at the man beneath her knee. "Secondary," she said quietly. "That means they already know Bay 1 isn't viable. They have a fallback position." She paused. "Where is your team taking him?" He turned his head slightly enough to look at her from the corner of his eye. And for the first time, something in his expression changed. Not fear exactly, more like the specific recalibration of a professional who has just realized he grossly underestimated his opposition. "Who are you?" he said. His voice was pressed flat by the position, but it had weight in it. "I'm the night shift nurse who's going to make sure you answer my question," she said. Another pause. "Basement loading dock," he said. "There's a vehicle, white panel van, private plates. They're pulling him out through the service level." She stood up, stepped back, and let him feel the distance between them change. He started to push himself up, and she was already gone, moving down the corridor at a walk that was just fast enough and just controlled enough, tucking the earpiece into her scrub pocket. She left him there. He wasn't going to raise an alarm, not with his earpiece gone, not without knowing whether she was alone or the beginning of something larger. She had about 4 minutes before he found another way to communicate. Maybe less. 4:24 a.m. She was back at Trauma Bay once in 90 seconds. She pushed through the door, and Harrison was already on his feet. He had pulled the hospital gown off, and was in the dark tactical undershirt he'd had on beneath it, the shoulder grays wrapped in the field dressing his team had applied before arrival. He looked at her hands, her posture, the earpiece she was holding out to him. "They're moving to secondary extraction," she said. "Loading dock, white panel van, 3 of them left in position, and they're 6 minutes out from executing." He took the earpiece, listened to the static. His jaw set. They burned the primary. Someone told him which bay. "Someone inside the building," she said, "or someone monitoring hospital communications remotely." He looked at the door. "We have to move now." "We have to move smart," she said. "There's a difference." He looked at her with an expression that was not impatience. It was something more like recognition. The look of one professional acknowledging another. "Walk me through it." "Basement access is through the laundry corridor on the north end. From there, we can reach the maintenance tunnel that runs under the east parking structure. But the north corridor is exposed. I just cleared one of their people from that junction, and he's going to find a way to communicate in the next 3 to 4 minutes. She paused. "There's another route. It's slower. Down through the central stairwell to sublevel 1, then through the mechanical corridor to the boiler room, which connects to the maintenance tunnel from the south end. Longer, but it avoids the loading dock entirely." "How much longer?" 8 minutes to the tunnel access versus 3 through the north end. He thought for exactly 1 second. 3 minutes in a hot corridor or 8 minutes in a cold one? "Cold," she said. "For time." He nodded once. "Lead." She looked at the door, looked back at him. "Can you run?" "I can do whatever I need to do, he said. She believed him. "Stay close and stay quiet. If I stop, you stop. If I go left, you go left. Don't ask questions while we're moving." "Understood." "One more thing." She met his eyes directly. "Your man Reeves is in the east stairwell, 2nd floor. I heard breathing on the secondary frequency. He's alive, but he can't move." Something moved through Harrison's face, complicated, controlled, deeply human. "We're not leaving him." "I'm not suggesting that," she said. "I'm telling you his location so that when this is over, you know exactly where to send help." She paused. "We can't get to him right now without compromising the exit. If we try, we lose both." He held her gaze for a long moment. The decision was written across his face, not the decision itself, but the cost of it, the weight a person carried when operational logic and personal loyalty pulled in opposite directions. "After you," he said. 4:27 a.m. They moved. Emily led him out of Bay 1 and turned immediately left away from the nurse's station toward the secondary corridor that ran parallel to the main floor. She kept her body and language loose, her pace measured. If anyone glanced at them from a distance, they would see a nurse and a patient doing a supervised walk. It happened every night. They passed Bay 4, Bay 5. She heard a phone ring at the nurse's station behind them and kept moving. At the junction before the central stairwell, she paused, checked the angle around the corner. "Clear." "Go," she said. They moved through the stairwell door. She let it close behind them without letting it bang, and they were on the stairs, moving down Harrison behind her, and slightly to her left, his footsteps quieter than she expected for a man his size. He had the same careful economy of movement she did. Years of the same kind of training expressing itself in the same kind of muscle memory. They reached sublevel 1 in under a minute. The mechanical corridor was long and low-ceilinged and smelled of old pipe insulation and cleaning solution. The overhead fluorescence ran the length of it, steady and humming. Emily knew this corridor because she had walked it in her second week following a maintenance tech who was fixing a heating issue, and she had memorized the layout the way she memorized everything. 3rd door on the left, then right. Then the boiler room, which was large and loud and covered sound beautifully. They were halfway down the corridor when the earpiece in her pocket crackled. The voice she had heard before mail clipped spoke again. "All units, the package is no longer in Bay 1. I repeat, package is not in Bay 1. Lock down sublevels." She stopped walking. Harrison stopped 1 step behind her. She looked at the corridor ahead. The 3rd door on the left was 40 feet away. "They know," Harrison said very quietly. "They knew fast," she said, which meant the man she had left upstairs had found a way to communicate in under 3 minutes, faster than she'd projected. She recalculated in real time. "Boiler room is still viable," she said. "Sub-level lockdown means they'll cover the loading dock first. That's their secondary extraction point. They'll want to protect it. The maintenance tunnel access from the south end won't be their first priority. How confident are you? 70%, she said. I've gone on less, he said. So have I, she said. Move. They covered the remaining 40 feet in under 20 seconds. She got the third door open, turned right, and they were in the boiler room, loud warmed the mechanical thrum of the building's heating system, covering everything. She crossed to the far wall and found the access panel she had noted 6 weeks ago. A heavy metal door latched but not locked, leading into the maintenance tunnel proper. She pulled it open. Harrison was right behind her. She went through first. He followed. She pulled the door shut behind them, and they were in the dark, in the quiet of the tunnel. And for one moment, neither of them moved. 4:33 a.m. Emily pulled out her phone. Low brightness, enough to see the rough concrete walls and the overhead pipes and the direction of the tunnel stretching east. How are you doing? She said. Fine, he said. She looked at his shoulder. The field dressing was holding. When did you last eat something? He gave her a look that she couldn't fully read in the low light, but that she suspected was somewhere between amused and exasperated. That's what you're asking me right now. Blood sugar affects decision-making, she said. Answer the question. 8 hours ago, he said. Maybe 9. Can you sustain for another 30 to 40 minutes? Yes. Then we're fine, she said. She started moving through the tunnel. He fell in beside her close enough to share the phone's low light. The tunnel comes out in the basement of the east parking structure, she said, keeping her voice low. From there, what do you need? A vehicle, a contact. A contact, he said. There's a second team extraction that was supposed to be standing by at a diner 2 blocks east. If the primary got burned, they should still be in position. Name of the diner? Moretti's, he said. She almost stopped walking. She had eaten breakfast at Moretti's 11 times in the last 6 months. It was half a block from her apartment. The waitress there knew her coffee order. She kept walking. You've been operating in my neighborhood, she said, not angry, just noting it. I've been operating in this city, he said. Small world. Smaller than I'd like right now, she said. They walked in silence for a moment. The tunnel curved slightly. The overhead pipes dripped at irregular intervals, the sound swallowed quickly by the concrete. Then Harrison spoke. The procurement files. I need you to understand what they contain. You don't have to tell me. I'm telling you because you've put yourself in the middle of this, and you deserve to know what the middle looks like. His voice was level. There are 47 federal contracts going back 6 years that were awarded through a coordinated fraud scheme involving 3 defense subcontractors, 2 senior officials at the Department of Defense, and a sitting member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. She kept her pace steady. The value of those contracts is $4.3 billion, he said. The money that was skimmed has been moving through shell companies for the last 4 years. I have the complete paper trail. I have recordings. I have internal communications. He paused. The senator's name is going to be on the front page of 2 major newspapers in 68 hours. She thought about what that meant, the scale of it, the reach. And the people who came to the hospital tonight, she said, they work for him. Some of them work for the people who work for him, Harrison said. It's layered. It always is. A beat. But yes, ultimately this comes from the top. She absorbed this in the same way she absorbed operational information under pressure, compartmentalize, filed, process it without allowing the emotional weight of it to interrupt the immediate task. How many people know you have the files? She asked. My chief of security, the 2 journalists, and as of 20 minutes ago, you. She let that sit for a moment. Why are you telling me the details? She said. Operationally, I don't need them. He walked beside her for a few steps before he answered. When he did, his voice was different, not softer exactly, but stripped of the operational register. More human. Because I've spent the last 4 years fighting this alone, he said. And tonight, for the first time, someone helped me. He paused. I don't usually talk about what I'm doing and why, but you asked in that room what was worth people coming after me in a hospital. You deserved a real answer. She didn't say anything for a moment. Okay, she said finally. That's it, okay. The files need to be published, and she said, the journalists need to be protected until they are, and you need to be alive to testify to the chain of custody. She glanced at him. That's the operational picture. We'll deal with the rest later. He made a sound that might under different circumstances have been a short laugh. "You're something else, Roberts." "Don't call me Roberts," she said. "What should I call you?" She thought about that for 2 steps. "Emily is fine." They reached the end of the tunnel at 441. The access door opened into the parking structure, basement concrete pillars, low light, the smell of engine oil and cold air. Emily stopped before she touched the door handle. "I'm going first," she said. "Give me 30 seconds before you follow." She pushed through the door, stepped into the parking structure and scanned. The basement level was empty, 4 parked cars, no movement, no sound except the ambient hum of the ventilation system. She turned and pushed the door back open. Harrison came through. 4:42 a.m. They were moving toward the exit ramp when her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize, but the message format was one she did recognize because it was a code structure she had used herself years ago. 4 words, "North exit, come now." She showed it to Harrison. He read it. His expression went carefully neutral. "That's Reeves's secondary contact protocol," he said. "Reeves is in the stairwell," she said. "He can't speak." "I know," Harrison said, "which means someone else is using his authentication." The weight of that landed between them. Someone on Harrison's own team. Someone with access to Reeves' secondary contact protocols. "Or someone who took his phone," Emily said. Harrison's face went very still. "Either possibility is a problem. Don't reply to it," she said, "and don't go to the north exit." He looked at her. "Where then?" She thought about the parking structure layout, the exit levels, the street grid outside. She thought about Moretti's diner 2 blocks east and a second team extraction that Harrison had said was standing by. "Give me the contact name at Moretti's," she said. "Carver," he said. "Danny Carver, tall, late 30s, scar on his chin." "How do I verify him?" "Tell him the number 7. He'll say 62. That's the authentication." She nodded. "There's a pedestrian exit on the east wall of this structure. It comes out on the side street. From there, it's 2 blocks directly east on foot." She looked at him. "Can you move that far without the shoulder becoming a problem?" "Yes." "Then let's go." They were 20 feet from the east pedestrian exit when the door at the top of the vehicle ramp, the one that led back into the hospital service level, opened. 2 figures came through it. Not hospital staff. Wrong posture, wrong clothing, wrong kind of purposeful. Emily and Harrison both stopped in the same instant. The 2 figures hadn't seen them yet. They were scanning from the top of the ramp outward, and the pillar between the ramp and the pedestrian exit put Emily and Harrison in a blind spot for approximately 4 more seconds. Emily looked at Harrison. He looked at her. She pointed at the pedestrian exit, then held up 2 fingers, then pointed at herself. He shook his head once sharp. She held her ground with her eyes. "I handle it. You go." He stared at her for 1 full second. His jaw was tight. Every instinct she could read in his body was pushing against the instruction. Then he moved to the pedestrian exit, pressed himself beside the door, and waited. She stepped out from behind the pillar. "Hey," she called in the voice of someone who had just been startled. Her hand went to her chest. "Oh my God, you scared me. Are you looking for the main entrance? It's back through the hospital service level. You took a wrong turn." They looked at her. She saw the calculation happen on both their faces simultaneously. Nurse, alone, not a threat. The one on the left spoke. "We're looking for a patient, James Harrison. He was moved from the trauma unit." She let confusion cross her face. "Moved at this hour?" She shook her head. "I'm just coming off a break. You'd need to check with the charge nurse upstairs. They don't tell me everything." "I can take you back up through the service level if you want." She started moving toward the ramp, toward them, closing the distance naturally, giving them no reason to look past her toward the pedestrian exit. The one on the right took a step toward her. Then his eyes moved, past her shoulder to the pedestrian exit door. She saw at the exact moment his focus shifted, and she was already moving when he raised his hand. What happened next took 11 seconds. The first man went down from a strike she had drilled 10,000 times to the nerve cluster below the ear. Silent, control complete. The second man was faster than she expected. He caught her forearm on the redirect and threw his weight into it, and they went sideways against the pillar, and she felt the impact through her whole left side, and she let it carry her into a spin that turned his momentum against him. Her elbow found his sternum. Her heel found the back of his knee. He went down hard. She stood over both of them, breathing through the 4-count rhythm, her left side aching, her hands still. She looked toward the pedestrian exit. Harrison was still there. He had not left. She walked to him. Her voice was flat. "I told you to go." "I stayed at the door," he said. "I didn't interfere." That's a technical distinction. I'm good at technical distinctions. He looked past her at the two figures on the ground, then back at her face. "You took down 2 armed professionals in 11 seconds. 11 and a half, she said, "with your bare hands." "I had a pillar for leverage," she said. "Come on." She pushed through the pedestrian exit, and they were outside, and the cold air hit her face like a slap, and she breathed it in and kept moving. 4:49 a.m. The street was empty. The city at this hour had a specific quality, not silent, never fully silent, but thinned out, reduced to its own backbone. A distant siren, a car running a light somewhere to the west. They moved east, side by side, not running, moving with the specific efficiency of two people who had both learned that the fastest way to avoid attention was to move like you had somewhere to be and nothing to explain. Her left side was going to bruise badly. She was already accounting for it, adjusting her posture without thinking about it. "You're hurt," Harrison said. "I'm functional," she said. "That's not the same thing." "No," she agreed, "but right now it's good enough." At the corner, she stopped and looked both ways. The street was clear. 1 block to Moretti's. She could see the light in the diner window from here, yellow and steady, the kind of light that meant the grill was on and someone was inside. "Stay behind me when we go in," she said. "Let me make contact first." "You know," he said quietly, "at some point I should probably be leading this." She looked at him. "When we're outside of a hospital and inside a security operation, yes, but right now we're still in my world." A beat. "I'll give it back to you when we get through the door." He said nothing for a moment. Then, with something in his voice she hadn't heard from him before, something direct and unguarded, "Emily." She looked at him. "Thank you," he said. The simplicity of it caught her somewhere she hadn't expected. Not the words themselves. She had been thanked before, in field situations, in debrief rooms, in contexts where gratitude was almost a professional formality. But this wasn't that. This was a man who had spent years in a world where vulnerability was a liability, saying 2 words with the full weight of what they meant. She held his gaze for 1 moment. "Don't thank me yet," she said. "We're not out." She turned and walked toward the diner door, and behind her James Harrison followed. And overhead, the sky above Chaco was still dark, but at its very eastern edge, barely visible, there was the first faint suggestion of something lighter beginning to happen. The night wasn't over, but it was starting to break. The bell above the diner door made a small sound when Emily pushed it open, the kind of sound that had been making the same small announcement for probably 30 years. The place was almost empty. A cook visible through the pass-through window, a woman in her 60s nursing coffee at the far end of the counter, and 1 man in a booth near the back wall who looked up the moment she walked in. Tall, late 30s, scar on his chin. He was already watching the door. Had been watching it, she could tell, for a while. She walked to the booth alone. Harrison stayed near the entrance, turned slightly away from the room, his back to the window. She had told him to give her 30 seconds, and he was giving them to her. She slid into the seat across from the man and said quietly, 7. He didn't blink. 62. She exhaled once through her nose. He's at the door. He's mobile, but his shoulder needs attention. We had contact inside the building, at least 4, possibly more. 2 are down in the parking structure basement. 1 was neutralized on the hospital floor. The 4th had communication capability last I checked. We need to assume they've consolidated by now. Danny Carver looked at her, the way people looked at things that surprised them, but that they were too trained to show surprise about. His eyes moved from her face to the door where Harrison was standing, then back. "Who are you?" "I'm the nurse who got him out," she said, a pause. "He told us there might be a local asset," Carver said carefully. "I'm not an asset," she said. "I'm a civilian who made a judgment call. But we can sort out the definitions later. Right now, I need to know what your extraction protocol looks like and whether your vehicle is clean." Carver leaned forward slightly. "The van is 2 blocks south. It's clean, different plates from the hospital route, different driver. We have a safe house in Evanston 40 minutes out." "Does anyone outside your team know that location?" "No." including Reeves. Carver's expression shifted. Reeves doesn't know the Evanston location. He only had the diner contact point. A beat. What happened to Reeves? He's alive. East stairwell, second floor hospital building. He needs extraction. He was contained, not capable of speaking when we made contact on the secondary frequency about 40 minutes ago. She met Carver's eyes. Someone used his authentication to send a text to Harrison's phone while we were in the maintenance tunnel. 4 words, north exit, come now. Carver went very still. Reeves doesn't carry his secondary authentication on his person, he said slowly. It's memorized, not written down, not stored anywhere. She let that land. So either someone broke him fast enough to get it out of him verbally, she said, or it came from inside your team. Carver was quiet for 3 full seconds. There are 4 people on this team, including me. Then you have a short list, she said. He stood up, moved to the door, signaled Harrison. Harrison crossed the diner in 10 seconds and slid into the booth beside Emily, and Carver sat back down across from them both. For a moment, the 3 of them looked at each other in the yellow light of Moretti's diner at 4:53 in the morning, and Emily thought that she had been in stranger configurations in her life, but not many. Harrison looked at Carver. You heard what she said about Reeves? Yes, Carver said. Your read. I don't know yet. I need to think. Carver's jaw was working. If it came from inside the leak as either Walsh or Kimura, those are the only 2 who had channel access tonight. Walsh has been with me for 6 years, Harrison said. I know, Carver said. I'm not saying it's Walsh. I'm saying those are the only 2 options if it didn't come from Reeves directly. A silence settled over the table. The cook in the back called something out in Spanish. The woman at the counter turned a page in her newspaper. The ordinariness of it was almost disorienting against what was happening in this booth. We moved to Evanston, Harrison said finally. We deal with the internal question when we're secured. And Reeves, Carver said. Harrison looked at Emily. She understood the question before he asked it. Give me the name of someone inside the hospital you can reach who isn't part of your operation, she said. Someone who can call in an anonymous welfare check to the 2nd floor stairwell without it connecting back to tonight. I have a contact at Chicago PD, Harrison said. Detective named Okafor. She's clean, not connected to any of this. I can send her a text from a clean number. Do it now, Emily said. Reeves needs eyes on him before whoever sent that authentication message decides he's a loose end. Harrison pulled a phone from his jacket, not the one she'd seen before, a different one, thinner, clearly a burner, and typed for 10 seconds. Send it. Then he put the phone on the table and looked at Emily with an expression she was starting to recognize, the one where he was about to say something he hadn't entirely planned on saying. There's something I haven't told you, he said. She waited. The procurement files. I said they go live in 68 hours through 2 journalists. He paused. One of those journalists reached to me 6 weeks ago through back channels. She has source material of her own independent of mine. She has a witness. Okay, Emily said. The witness is a OD analyst named Patricia Cho. She's been in protective custody for the last 3 weeks under a false identity in a location that only I and 2 of my security team know. He stopped. Reeves is one of the 2. The weight of that dropped into the booth like something physical. If Reeves was broken, Emily said, then Patricia Cho's location is compromised. Yes, Harrison said. Does your other team member know the location at Walsh? Then if it's Walsh who leaked the authentication, then they already have Patricia's location, Harrison said. His voice was controlled, but she could hear what was under it, the specific strain of a man who had built something carefully over years and could feel it beginning to fracture. Carver had his phone out. I can try to reach Walsh on the secondary channel. Feel it out. Don't, Emily said sharply enough that both men looked at her. If it is Walsh contacting him, tells him we're alive and coordinating. We lose our only advantage. A pause. Carver put his phone down. Harrison looked at her. You're right. Can you reach Patricia Cho directly? She said. She has a check-in protocol every 6 hours. Her next check-in is at 6 a.m. He looked at his watch. That's 63 minutes from now. Do you have a way to initiate contact outside the check-in window without triggering a panic protocol? There's a duress word, he said. If I contact her directly before the window and use the duress word, she'll know it's real and not coerced. Duress word being something only she and you know. Yes. Emily looked at the door, looked at the window, looked at the cook through the pass-through. Running calculations. We go to Evanston, she said. We do not contact Walsh or Kimura en route. When we arrive and we're secured, you reach Patricia Cho through whatever clean channel you have, and you get her moving before 6 a.m. Whatever her location is, she shouldn't be there when the check-in window opens. Harrison nodded. Carver nodded. And the files, Emily said. Where are they physically? Encrypted server, Harrison said. Remote access only. The credentials are in my head, and nobody else has them. Nobody, he said. She absorbed that. It was both a strength and a problem if something happened to Harrison. The evidence chain died with him. He knew it too. She could see it in his face. Then your survival is not just personal, she said. It's the whole case. I've been aware of that for about 14 months, he said. She stood up. Let's go. 5:02 a.m. The van was exactly where Carver had said it was 2 blocks south, backed into a loading zone. A man at the wheel who looked at Emily when she climbed in, and then at Harrison, and then at Carver, and said nothing. That was the driver. His name, she found out later, was Tomas, and he was the kind of person who communicated primarily through the quality of his silence. Harrison sat in the back with her. Carver was in the passenger seat. As Thomas pulled out and turned north, Emily looked at Harrison in the low interior light and said, Tell me about Patricia Cho. He shifted, looked at his hands. She's 29. She's been working at the DoD for 5 years. She found the first anomaly in the contract data about 2 years ago, thought it was a bookkeeping error. When she looked closer, she realized it wasn't. He paused. She brought it to her supervisor. Her supervisor was one of the people involved. 3 days later, she had a car accident that wasn't an accident. She survived. Barely. Emily was quiet. She went to the FBI, he continued. The agent she spoke to is connected to the senator's office. She was told the investigation was being reviewed and she should go home and stay quiet. He paused. She reached out to the journalist independently. The journalist reached out to me. I had already been building the financial paper trail from the contractor side. He looked at Emily. Patricia Cho is the one who can testify to the internal DoD communications. My files prove the money. She proves the intent. Without her, the case is harder to prosecute. And with her, he said, it's airtight. Emily sat with this. Outside the van, Chicago moved past in the particular thin darkness of a city just before dawn, streetlights, empty intersections, the occasional lit window of an early riser. She had lived in this city for 14 months, and she had spent most of those months reminding herself that it was not her job to fix things anymore, that she had done enough, that she was allowed to be ordinary. She looked at Harrison. How did you end up doing this? He looked slightly surprised, not at the question she thought, but at the timing of it. Now, we have 40 minutes, she said, and I'd rather know who you are than sit here in silence. He was quiet for a moment, then, my brother was a contractor, not Armada, a smaller firm earlier on, right after I got out of the service. He died in a theater in the Middle East because the equipment his unit was using had been approved through a fraudulent testing process. The contractor had falsified safety data to win the bid. His voice was even, steady, but she could hear the architecture of something very old and very unresolved underneath it. The people responsible were never charged. The contracts kept flowing. The firm got bigger. He stopped. I built Armada to be the opposite of that, to do it right. And then I started seeing the same patterns in the industry around me, and I realized it was systemic, not isolated. So you started building the case, she said. It took 3 years, he said, and now it's 67 hours from breaking publicly, and someone inside my own operation may have just sold out the one person whose testimony makes it matter. Emily looked at him for a long moment. She thought about a man named David Roberts, whose name was on a headstone in a cemetery in Virginia, and about a mission in a place she was never supposed to have been, and about the particular way guilt and purpose could become so knotted together that you stop being able to tell them apart. I'm sorry about your brother, she said. He looked at her. The simplicity of her saying it, no strategic purpose to it, no forward motion, just the human acknowledgement of a human loss seemed to catch him somewhere unguarded. Thank you, he said, and this time it sounded different then the thank you outside the diner. 5:18 a.m. Carver turned in the passenger seat. We've got a problem. Thomas had already slowed the van. Emily felt it before Carver finished the sentence, the change in velocity, the particular tension of a driver who had spotted something ahead. Black sedan, Thomas said. His voice was the first time she'd heard it, flat and precise. Stationary at the interchange. It's been there since we turned north. Emily looked at the back window. There was another vehicle behind them. A gray SUV 4-car lengths back, matching their speed. We're boxed, she said. Not yet, Carver said. The sedan hasn't moved. It will when we reach the interchange, she said. They're waiting for the geometry to align. Sedan in front, SUV behind interchange narrows the lanes. She looked at Tomas. Do not go to the interchange. Turn east at the next light. Tomas turned east at the next light without being asked twice. They'll follow, Harrison said. Let them follow, Emily said. Following means they still want to intercept cleanly. If they wanted to close it out on the highway, they would have done it already. Somewhere in the city at 5 in the morning still has witnesses. So we go deeper into the city, Carver said. He understood the logic. She could hear it in his voice. We go to the medical district, she said. Rush University campus. It's 3 blocks east. There's a shift change at 5:30, staff parking, structures, loading areas, a lot of movement, and a lot of eyes. Nobody makes a move in a campus full of hospital workers changing shifts. You know this neighborhood, Harrison said. I live here, she said. Tomas drove east. The sedan at the interchange fell behind. The gray SUV stayed with them, steady 4-car lengths like it was on a string. It's not closing, Carver said, watching the mirror. It's hurting, Emily said. Someone's directing them by radio. They're trying to push us toward a specific location. Which location, Harrison said. She looked at the street signs, thought about the grid, thought about what was east of the medical district at this hour, what was open, what was empty, what gave a team of 3 or 4 the kind of control over an outcome that they needed. There's a construction site on Polk, she said. Been dark for 6 months. No cameras, no personnel walled off. If I were positioning for an intercept, that's where I'd want the target. Then we don't go near Polk, Harrison said. No, she agreed, and Tomas, Rush University parking structure, north entrance. Go in, go to level 2 and stop. Tomas pulled into the parking structure at 5:23, drove to level 2 and stopped the van in the middle of the lane, engine running. The gray SUV did not follow them in. The 3 of them sat in the van and waited. 10 seconds? 20. The SUV had not come up the ramp. They're not following into a structure with multiple exits, Carver said. No, Emily said, which means they had specific orders about engagement conditions. She looked at Harrison. That's unusual for a freelance hit team. Freelancers don't turn down a shot. Someone is running these people with operational discipline. Federal discipline, Harrison said. His voice was very quiet. The word hung in the van. Someone with a badge is coordinating this directly, she said. That's what I was afraid of, he said. Not surprised, just exhausted by the confirmation of something he had long suspected. Emily pulled out her phone and checked the time. 5:24, 36 minutes until Patricia Cho's check-in window. We stay in this structure for 20 minutes, she said, long enough for the team outside to reposition and create a gap. Then we take the south exit and go north on Damon to Evanston on surface streets. Longer but harder to box. Nobody argued. She looked at Harrison. Use the burner. Contact Patricia Cho now. Use the duress word. Don't wait for the check-in window. He looked at her and she saw the moment he made the decision, the precise instant when operational caution yielded to the recognition that caution had already cost them enough tonight. He dialed. It rang 3 times. A woman's voice answered. Young, alert, despite the hour. Already tense the way people in hiding were always already tense. It's me, Harrison said. The paint is dry. He paused. Patricia, move now. Go to the secondary. Don't use the primary channel. Move now. A sharp intake of breath on the other end. Then, understood. The line went dead. Harrison lowered the phone. His face was controlled, but she could see what it was costing him, the specific weight of a man who had promised someone safety and was now telling them to run because that promise had been compromised. She'll move, he said. Good, Emily said. 5:29 a.m. They sat in the parking structure, and the silence between them had a different texture now. Not the taut operational silence of people managing an immediate threat, but the heavier quiet of people who had been running hard for several hours and were feeling for the first time the weight of everything they had been carrying. Linda was still on the hospital floor. Emily thought about her. About the 12-year nurse with the tired eyes who had cleared the corridor without asking why, who had looked at Emily and asked, "Who are you?" and had accepted the non-answer and done the work anyway. She deserved to know she had made a difference tonight. Maybe someday Emily would find a way to tell her. She thought about Dr. Grant, who had given her the vitals assignment in Trauma Bay 1 as a punishment-adjacent task, the kind of thing you assigned to the person you wanted to humiliate with routine work. And in doing so, had put exactly the right person in exactly the right room at exactly the right moment. She almost found that funny. Almost. Carver turned around from the passenger seat. He had his phone in his hand and his face was doing something complicated. "I reached Kimura on the secondary channel. I didn't identify the location. I just asked for status." Emily's attention sharpened. "And he said Walsh went dark 2 hours ago." Carver's voice was measured, but the effort was visible. "He said Walsh told him he had a personal contact to make and would check back in within 30 minutes. He never did." The van went very quiet. "Walsh," Harrison said. "It wasn't a question." Carver nodded once slowly. Emily watched Harrison sit with this information. She had seen people receive hard news in operational context before the specific way the body processed betrayal. When the betrayal came from inside, from someone trusted, from someone whose reliability you had staked other people's lives on. It was different from receiving news about an enemy. An enemy's action was expected accounted for. This was different. This was the particular wound that didn't follow the map. 6 years, Harrison said very quietly. "I know," Carver said. A long silence. Then Harrison straightened up. One deliberate movement, the posture shifting, the expression going clean. She recognized it. She had done the same thing herself in a different life, in different circumstances. The internal decision to deal with the grief later. To function now. "When we get to Evanston," he said, "I need to communicate with the journalist directly. Tonight changes the timeline. If Walsh has been turned, we don't know what information has moved and to whom. The 72-hour window may already be compromised." "Can you accelerate publication?" Emily asked. "They're not ready," he said. "They still need 48 hours to verify the chain of custody documentation. How much of that verification depends on you being physically accessible?" He thought about this. "A significant portion." "Then we need to get you to these, she said, "or get secure communication to them that substitutes for physical presence." "I have a satellite encryption protocol," he said. "If I can get to a clean laptop and a secure connection at the Evanston location, I can transmit everything they need in 2 hours." "Then that's what we do when we get there," she said. "Everything else, Walsh, the senator, the people outside who are reorganizing right now, that's the next problem. First thing is the files. First thing is making sure the truth gets to the people who can publish it." He looked at her for a long moment. "You know when this is over?" "Tomas," she said, "are we clear to move?" Tomas had been watching the ramp the whole time. "Clear since 5:28, he said. "Then let's go," she said. They rolled out of the parking structure, south exit at 5:31, turned north on Damon, and the city moved past them in the growing gray light of a Chicago morning that was finally reluctantly deciding to begin. The shift change traffic had started. Nurses and doctors and maintenance workers moving in and out of the medical campus, ordinary people doing ordinary things at the end of an extraordinary night. Emily watched the street. She was thinking about Walsh, about the 6 years Harrison had trusted him, about the way trust, when it was broken from the inside, didn't just damage the relationship, it cast backward light on everything that had come before, making you question what was real and what was performance, and at what point the lie had begun. She was also thinking about something else, something Harrison had said in the tunnel that she had filed away and not yet examined closely. Patricia Cho was 29 years old. She had found an anomaly in contract data, reported it to her supervisor, nearly been killed in a stage accident, been ignored by a connected federal agent, and had spent 3 weeks in hiding under a false identity, all because She had seen something wrong and refused to pretend she hadn't. 29 years old. Emily thought about what it meant to be that young and carry that kind of weight. To make the choice to speak when speaking could get you killed, and to keep making it every day you stayed alive. She thought about her own choices, the ones she had made in the field and the ones she had made 14 months ago when she walked away from the field and into a small apartment in Lincoln Park in a night shift nursing position at Mercy General. She had told herself she was done, that she had given enough, that ordinary was not a failure, it was a choice and a legitimate one, and she still believed that. But she also knew with the clarity of someone who had just spent a night moving through a hospital in a parking structure, in a maintenance tunnel with a billionaire and a diner contact, and a van driver who communicated in silence, she knew that done was not the same as gone. The thing she was underneath all the careful construction of normal was still there. It had never left. She had just been very politely ignoring it. She looked out the window as they crossed into the north side and kept going. Evanston was 25 minutes away, and somewhere ahead the sun was coming up, whether she was ready for it or not. 5:44 a.m. Carver's phone rang. He answered it. Listened for 4 seconds. His whole body changed a subtle but unmistakable shift, the kind that happened when information arrived that rearranged the picture. He turned around slowly and looked at Harrison. Patricia chose secondary location, he said. She got there 6 minutes ago. He paused. She wasn't alone when she arrived. The van went very still. Walsh was already there, Carver said, and this time even Harrison's controlled face couldn't hold what moved through it, because Walsh hadn't been sent to Patricia's secondary location by the people who wanted the files buried. Walsh had been there because he knew where the secondary was, which meant Walsh had been building his own play all along, not reporting to the people trying to stop the publication, building something else entirely. What does he want? Harrison said. His voice was so controlled it was almost unrecognizable. He says he wants to talk, Carver said. To you, directly. A pause. He says if you're not there within 45 minutes, he leaves with Patricia. The van was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then Harrison looked at Emily, and Emily looked at him. And the 30 seconds that followed were the longest 30 seconds of the entire night, because what happened in the next 45 minutes was no longer about files or procurement fraud or a senator's name on a front page. It was about a man who had trusted someone for 6 years and now had to decide in the back of a van at 5:44 in the morning exactly how much that trust had been worth and what he was willing to do about it. Take me there, Harrison said to Tomas. Tomas drove. Nobody in the van said anything for the first 3 minutes. Tomas drove. Carver watched the mirrors. Harrison sat with his hands on his knees and his jaw set in the particular way of a man who was doing the internal work of separating what he felt from what he needed to do and finding that the separation was harder than it had ever been before. Emily watched him do it. She had been here herself. Not with Walsh specifically, not with any of the exact circumstances that sat in this van right now, but she had been in the place where the person you trusted had turned out to be something other than what you believed, and the ground under every memory of them had shifted retroactively, and you had to decide in real time how much of yourself you were going to spend on the grief before the situation demanded you spend it somewhere else. She had not handled that moment well the first time. She was hoping Harrison would handle it better. Walsh has been with me since Armada's 2nd year, Harrison said. His voice was steady, but she could hear the fault line beneath it. He was with me when we were 8 people working out of a converted warehouse on the south side. He turned down offers from 3 larger firms to stay. He paused. I paid him well. I treated him well. I thought he believed in what we were doing. Maybe he does, Emily said. Harrison looked at her. He went to the secondary location, she said, not to the people trying to stop the publication. He went to where Patricia was, and he was asking to talk to you directly. She met his eyes. That's not the behavior of someone who's been turned. That's the behavior of someone running a separate play. The question is what kind? The van moved north. The city was lightening around them, the gray beginning to take on color at its edges. You think he wants to negotiate, Harrison said. I think he wants something, she said. And the fact that he's still holding Patricia instead of handing her over means he thinks he has leverage. What leverage does Walsh have that the people trying to bury your files don't already have? Harrison was quiet for a moment. Then something moved through his face, not quite recognition, but the beginning of it, like a shape he had seen before, but not in this context. "The secondary file set," he said slowly. Carver turned around from the passenger seat. "What secondary file set?" "When I built the documentation package," Harrison said, "I created two versions. The primary set is on the encrypted remote server. That's what I've been describing. But there's a secondary set, physical, printed and stored at a location that only I and my chief of security knew about." He stopped. "Walsh was my chief of security for the first 3 years of building this case. Before I restructured the operation and moved him to team lead, he had access to the secondary location during that period." "So Walsh has the physical files," Emily said. "If he went back for them before tonight, yes." "And the physical files, are they sufficient independently? Can the journalist publish on those alone?" "Yes," Harrison said. "The physical set has everything the digital set has. It was the original before I moved it remotely for security reasons." The van went quiet again. Then Carver said very carefully, "So Walsh has a complete copy of the evidence package, plus the one witness whose testimony makes the case airtight." He paused. "And he's not giving either of them to the people trying to kill you?" "No," Harrison said. "He's not." Emily leaned forward slightly. "Then what does he want?" "I don't know yet," Harrison said, "but I'm about to find out." 6:02 a.m. The secondary location was a storage facility in Rogers Park, a neighborhood on the far north side of the city, close enough to the lake that you could smell the water in the air even in February. Tomas pulled onto the access road and stopped 40 yards from the main building. Harrison reached for the door handle. "Wait," Emily said. He stopped. "You don't walk in there alone," she said. "He asked for me specifically." "I know what he asked for," she said. "And I know that when someone who may have burned one person in your operation asks you to come alone to a location with no external witness, the right response is not to comply." She paused. "I go with you. Carver stays with the van and keeps the engine running. If we're not back in 20 minutes, Carver calls the journalist directly and tells them to publish whatever they have immediately." "Understood." Harrison looked at her, then at Carver. Carver nodded. Harrison looked back at Emily. "You're very good at this," he said. "Thank you," she said. "Let's go." They walked to the building together. The door was unlocked. Walsh had left it that way. Inside, past the front corridor, in the large central storage area where climate-controlled units ran in parallel rows, they found him. Walsh was standing with his back against one of the unit doors, arms crossed, and he was exactly what his name had made her expect, mid-40s solid, with the kind of face that had been weathered by years of operating in conditions that didn't accommodate softness. Patricia Cho was sitting on a folding chair 6 feet away from him, hands in her lap, completely still. She was younger than Emily had pictured, 29, Harrison had said, but she looked younger than that right now, in the way people looked younger when they were frightened and trying not to show it. She looked up when Harrison walked in. The relief on her face was immediate and total, the specific relief of someone who had been alone with their own fear for too long and had just been handed back the feeling that they were not entirely on their own. Harrison looked at Walsh. Walsh looked at Harrison. Neither of them spoke for 3 full seconds. Then Walsh said, "I'm not what you think I am." "Then tell me what you are," Harrison said. "I've been working with DOJ for 8 months, Walsh said. But I wasn't turned by the other side. I was approached by a federal task force that's been building a parallel case against the same targets. They asked me to stay close to your operation to make sure the publication didn't get derailed before their arrest warrants were ready." He paused. "I used Reeves's authentication because I needed to draw you out of the hospital without the other team intercepting you first. I knew the North exit message would read as a trap and that you were smart enough not to take it." The silence in the room had a specific texture, the kind that happened when information arrived that required the complete reconfiguration of everything that had come before it. Harrison did not move. "You could have told me." "The task force's protocol required operational separation," Walsh said. "If you knew about the parallel investigation, your behavior would have changed. The people we're building the case against have resources inside DOJ. If they detected any coordination between us, it would have collapsed both cases." "How long have you known about the arrest warrants?" Harrison said. His voice was very quiet. "They were issued 48 hours ago," Walsh said. "The senator, Both DOD officials, 3 of the subcontractor executives. He paused. The warrants are sealed. They execute at 8 a.m. this morning. Emily looked at Harrison. He was very still. That's why the hit team moved last night, she said, thinking out loud. Not because of the 72-hour publication window, because someone inside DOJ, with access to the sealed warrants, told them the arrests were coming and they had one night to close it out. Yes, Walsh said. He looked at Emily for the first time with the expression of someone recalculating in real time. Who are you, night shift nurse? She said. Patricia, are you hurt? Patricia Cho shook her head. I'm okay. Her voice was small but controlled. He told me he was protecting me. I didn't know whether to believe him. He was, Harrison said. He looked at Walsh for a long moment. The weight of 6 years and 8 months of hidden truth sat between them, and Emily watched Harrison move through it, the anger, the recognition, the adjustment. He was doing it fast. He had no choice. The physical files, you have them. Unit 47, Walsh said. He pulled a key from his jacket and held it out. Everything is there, intact. Harrison took the key. His hand was steady. The DOJ task force, Emily said. Do they know about the hit team that was inside the hospital tonight? They will in about 15 minutes, Walsh said. I sent a full report at 5:30. The team leaders are coordinating with CPD to sweep the hospital and the parking structure. He looked at her. Your colleagues are safe. The floor was cleared before the second team entered the building. Linda, she thought. Marcus, Dr. Tate in Bay 3, the sleeping resident. All of them safe, she breathed. Reeves, Harrison said. CPD found him at 5:51, Walsh said. He's at Northwestern Memorial. Bruised, concussed, angrier than he's ever been in his life, but he's going to be fine. The corner of his mouth moved slightly. He told the EMTs he was ready to go back in. Something in Harrison's face changed completely at that. The control held, but underneath it, she could see the specific relief of a man who had been carrying the weight of responsibility for another person's safety and had just been allowed to put it down. 6:11 a.m. Unit 47 held 4 sealed boxes, each labeled in Walsh's handwriting with dates and case reference numbers. Harrison looked at them for a long moment without touching them, just stood there, looking at 4 years of his life in physical form. Then he looked at Emily. I need a laptop and a secure connection, and I need to contact the journalist. The Evanston safe house, Walsh said. Kimura is there. It's clean. I'm confident in Kimura. He was never in the loop on the DOJ coordination. He paused. The safe house has a satellite uplink. Then we go to Evanston, Harrison said. He reached down and picked up the first box. Walsh picked up the second. Carver, who had appeared in the doorway at some point during the conversation, exactly 20 minutes she noted, and he had come to check, picked up the third. Emily picked up the fourth. She hadn't planned to. It just happened. She reached down and picked it up and fell into the line of people carrying boxes toward the door, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Harrison glanced at her. He didn't say anything. But the look was one she would remember. 6:29 a.m. The Evanston safe house was a 2-story house on a quiet block, the kind of block where nobody looked twice at a van pulling in before 7 in the morning, because everyone had somewhere to be. Kimura opened the door before they knocked. He had been watching from the window. He was compact, precise, with the alert stillness of someone who had been managing tension alone for several hours and was deeply grateful to see reinforcement. Patricia Cho sat at the kitchen table and drank the first hot coffee she'd had in 3 weeks, and Emily watched the color come back into her face degree by degree and thought about what it meant to hold a truth alone for that long. To carry it in your body every day, knowing what it cost and carrying it anyway. Harrison was in the back room with the laptop and the satellite uplink within 4 minutes of arriving. Walsh was on the phone with the DOJ task force. Carver was coordinating with CPD about the overnight operation at Mercy General. Kimura was making more coffee. Emily sat at the kitchen table across from Patricia. Are you really a nurse? Patricia asked. Yes, Emily said. Patricia looked at her for a moment. You don't seem like just a nurse. Nobody's just anything, Emily said. Patricia was quiet for a moment, wrapping both hands around her mug. I've been in that place for 3 weeks, she said. The secondary location, it was fine, I was safe, but it was so quiet. She paused. I kept thinking, what if no one publishes it? What if I did all of this and it just disappears? What if the right people never actually know? They're going to know, Emily said. How can you be sure, Mom? Because Harrison is in that room right now making sure of it, she said. And because you did the right thing and kept doing it, that matters. It always matters, even when it doesn't feel like it. Patricia looked at her. What's your name? Emily. Were you scared tonight? Emily thought about this honestly. Not scared, she said, focused. She paused. Scared and focused feel similar from the outside sometimes, but they're different on the inside. Which one do you prefer? Focused, Emily said, every time. Patricia nodded slowly, like someone filing something away. 7:02 a.m. Harrison came out of the back room at 7:02. He looked like a man who had been awake for over 20 hours, which he had, but there was something in his face that hadn't been there before. Not lighter exactly. Unburdened was the better word. The specific quality of a person who has been carrying something a very long way and has finally set it down in the place it was always supposed to go. Done, Emily said. Complete transmission, he said. Both journalists confirmed receipt and chain of custody verification. They're accelerating the timeline. First story runs at noon today. He paused. They're also connected to the 8-wire service. By the time the 6 o'clock news runs, it will be everywhere. The table was quiet for a moment. Then Patricia Cho set down her coffee mug and put her face in her hands, and her shoulders shook for about 15 seconds, and nobody said anything because there was nothing to say. She had earned the 15 seconds completely. When she looked back up, her eyes were wet and her chin was steady, and she said, "Okay," in the voice of someone who had just closed a chapter that had cost them more than they had expected to pay. "Okay, Fran," Harrison echoed. 7:14 a.m. Walsh came into the kitchen and looked at Harrison. "The arrest team executes in 46 minutes, he said. "The senator's residence, the DOD offices, the 3 subcontractor headquarters, all simultaneous." He paused. The hit team from last night's CPD picked up 2 in the parking structure, 1 on the hospital floor. The 4th was found at O'Hare attempting to board a flight to Miami. All 4 are in federal custody. Harrison sat down at the table. He had not sat down in several hours, Emily realized. She watched him absorb the information. On all of it, the full picture of the night, the full picture of everything that was now in motion. And she watched the exhaustion settle into him the way it settled into people when the adrenaline finally stopped lying to them about how tired they were. "You need the shoulder looked at," she said. "Later," he said. "No," she said. "Kimura, do you have a first aid kit?" Kimura opened a cabinet and produced one without comment. She sat down beside Harrison and opened the kit. He submitted to this with the air of a man who recognized that resistance was inefficient and had decided not to spend energy on it. She got the field dressing off and looked at the graze clean, not deep, already beginning to show the particular angry color of tissue that had been stressed and was not happy about it. "This needs sutures," she said. "I'll go to a clinic later," he said. "You'll go to a hospital," she said. "And you'll tell them the truth about how you got it, because by 8 a.m. today, the people who shot you are going to be in federal custody, and there's no operational reason to hide it anymore." He looked at her. "Right," she said. "Right," he said. She dressed the wound cleanly and efficiently, and when she was done, she looked at the neat bandage and the careful tape lines and thought that it was a very strange morning, all things considered, and that she had spent the last 9 hours being several different people simultaneously, and she was very tired and also in a way she couldn't quite name yet, more awake than she had felt in 14 months. 7:31 a.m. She called Linda. It rang twice. "Emily." Linda's voice was thick with the residue of a difficult shift and the particular strain of someone who had spent hours not knowing what was happening and had done the right things anyway. "I'm okay," Emily said. "Is everyone on the floor okay?" "Yes, we had CPD come through around 6. They wouldn't tell us much." A pause. "What happened tonight?" "It's complicated," Emily said, "but everyone is safe. You did everything right. The patient in Bay 1 is safe. The people who were in the building, they're in custody." A long pause. "Oh, S.O." Emily on Linda said, "Who are you?" It was the second time she'd been asked that tonight. "I'm a nurse," she said. "I work the night shift and I live in Lincoln Park. And I drink my coffee black. That's who I am." She paused. But I'm also some other things. I'll explain it sometime. Linda was quiet for a moment. Are you coming in for your next shift? Emily almost smiled. Yeah, Linda, I'm coming in. Okay, Linda said. Good. And then because Linda was Linda, and 12 years of hospital work had made her a person who moved efficiently through what needed to be said. I'm glad you're okay. Thank you, Emily said. I'm glad you are too. She ended the call. 8:03 a.m. She was standing near the window when Harrison found her. The morning was fully established now, real daylight, the kind that didn't apologize for itself. She could hear a news alert on Walsh's phone across the room. The first one, the details still sparse, but the name already there, the senator's name, the word arrested the word federal. And she thought about the two journalists who had spent years on this story and were now watching it ignite. Harrison stood beside her. The job offer, he said. She had been expecting this. Top executive, he said. Global security operations. You would be exceptional at it. You already know that. I know, she said, but he said, but I already have a gusto, she said. He looked at her. A night shift nurse at a trauma unit. A night shift nurse at a trauma unit, she confirmed, where I apparently keep the floor running, catch billionaires faking comas, and navigate federal corruption cases before dawn. She looked at him. It's a good job. He looked at her for a long moment. You're serious. I'm always serious, she said. You've spent 10 hours with me. You should know that. I do know that, he said. I also know that you're the most capable person I've encountered in a professional context in about a decade. And that includes people whose entire identity is being capable in crisis situations. She held his gaze. I'm not going back, she said. I know that's not what you want to hear. But I built this life because I needed to build it. And last night doesn't change that. If anything, it proves that what I am doesn't disappear just because I changed the context. I don't need a title or an operation or a paycheck to be who I am. She paused. I can be who I am at Mercy, General. He was quiet. I will say this, she added. If something comes up, something specific, something where it genuinely matters that you call me, call me. She met his eyes. You'll know when that is. So will I. He looked at her for one more moment. Then he nodded once. Not the operational nod, something more personal than that. Okay, he said. Okay, she said. She picked up her coat from the chair behind her and put it on. She said goodbye to Carver, who shook her hand and held it for a second longer than professional habit required, which she took as the highest compliment. She said goodbye to Walsh, who looked at her with an expression she suspected meant he was already filing her name somewhere useful. She said goodbye to Kimura, who gave her a nod and a fresh cup of coffee for the road. She looked at Patricia Cho one more time. Patricia was looking back at her from across the room with the expression of someone who wanted to say something big and wasn't sure the words existed yet. Thank you, Patricia said finally. Emily looked at her, at this 29-year-old woman who had found a number in a spreadsheet and followed it through every consequence it produced through the accident and the silence, in the weeks of hiding, and had never let go of the truth she was carrying. You did the work, Emily said. All I did was move some boxes. Patricia shook her head slowly, but she was almost smiling. Emily walked to the door. Harrison was there. He had walked her out without announcing it, just materialized at the door the way people did when they wanted a last moment and didn't want to call attention to the wanting. Mercy General, he said. Trauma unit, night shift. That's the one, she said. I'll send something, he said, to the hospital. An anonymous contribution, equipment, resources, something useful. You don't have to do that, she said. I know I don't have to, he said. She looked at him one last time, this complicated, formidable, genuinely decent man who had landed in her hospital bleeding and pretending to be unconscious and had somehow managed to be the most honest person she had spoken to in 14 months. Take care of your shoulder, she said. Take care of your rib, he said. She had not mentioned her ribs. She almost asked how he knew, but then she remembered he had been watching her since the parking structure. Of course he had noticed the way she was holding herself. I'm fine, she said. You're always fine, he said. That doesn't mean you're not also hurt. She held that. It was, she thought, one of the more accurate things anyone had said to her in a long time. Goodbye, Harrison, she said. Goodbye, Emily, he said. She walked down the steps and on to the sidewalk. And the February morning hit her full in the face, cold, honest, completely indifferent to what had happened in the last 9 hours, and she walked to the end of the block and turned south toward the train. She thought about Linda, who would be coming off shift soon, about Bay 4 through Bay 9, and the 63-year-old man who had had his appendix out, and the teenager with the concussion, who she hoped had gotten some sleep. About the next night shift, which was Thursday and the one after that, and the ordinary, precise, utterly necessary work of showing up for people at 3 in the morning when everything in their body was telling them something was wrong. She had done that work for 6 days. She was going to keep doing it, not because she had given up on being who she was, but because this was who she was. All of it together, the training and the instincts, and the 4-count breathing, and the ability to assess a threat in half a second, and also the patience to sit with a frightened teenager at 2 in the morning and bring him an extra blanket without being asked. And also the woman who had read a man's breathing pattern in a dimly lit hospital room and known in the same instant that the night was about to require everything she had. All of it was the same person. She had spent 14 months trying to divide herself into the person she used to be and the person she was choosing to be, as if those were separate things that couldn't occupy the same body. They weren't separate. They had never been. At 7 minutes past 8 in the morning, as a senator's name began running across every news feed in America, Emily Roberts walked into the Clark Street train station, bought a coffee from the stand near the entrance, and headed home. She was a night shift nurse who had saved a billionaire's life before sunrise, helped expose the most significant federal corruption case in a decade, taken down 4 armed professionals without a single weapon, and made sure every patient on her floor made it safely through the night. She was not remarkable in spite of who she was. She was remarkable because of exactly who she had always been. And on the morning that the world finally started to see it, she got on a train, drank her coffee, and was already thinking about Thursday's shift. That was the thing about Emily Roberts. She never needed anyone to see her to know exactly who she was.